pilot, and this is a picture of it. We're only showing 4 different pictures from the whole video, and this is one that we're authorized to show. And they show this in so many different ways. Sometimes they're lined up like this. Sometimes they're standing on rubble. And he's walking among these soldiers in what appears to be the ruins of buildings. And then they cut to a cage. Maybe it's 8 feet by 5 feet and 10 feet or so tall. I'm not positive, but that's somewhat close. Stay with that. The bars go up and down, as you can see. There are no crossbars there in the middle. And there are more bars on top of this thing. So he's caged in. The Jordanian pilot is inside. The camera originally tilts up from his midsection to his face, and that's the first time you see, with the bars in the foreground, that he's standing upright with his hands down by his side, and he's looking directly at the ground. But it doesn't say that way. He does look up. The orange jumpsuit appears to be partly covered by or doused with some sort of liquid. See it there on his right side, on your screen left? It looks like there's dirt or something liquid on there. See that? The video intercuts with a soldier outside this cage now, and this soldier is in desert camo, wearing desert boots, sand-colored gloves, a gun strapped around his neck and then resting on his back, and his head covered. Again, you only see his eyes, much like the other soldiers, and he's holding what looks like a long stick, one end wrapped with some sort of fabric, a much larger version of a Q-tip with cotton on just one end. It's clearly a torch. There's no speaking now on the video. There's what sounds like a faint heartbeat in the background. It gets louder and more rapid over the next couple of minutes. There's a dramatic chanting sound in the background. There are very quick edits and special effects, and there's sound effects along the way. And it's building in drama. And then the screen goes to black, and not just for that long, but for a few seconds. And the next image is that of the same uniformed man I described earlier, holding the same torch. You hear the sound effect of a lighter, and the torch is lit. Then there's some special effects, and the torch is moved from high to low, from this area to reach down and touch a trail of something that is clearly flammable on the ground. It looks like a long trail of sand, and that line of sand stretches from that torch to the cage that contains the hostage Jordanian pilot. And once that line of sand is lit, it burns like a fuse. It's a number of feet long. Because of the edits, I couldn't give you a description of how long. But eventually, with dramatic effect, that fuse burns to the edge of the cage. And as it reaches this metal cage, the sand at the bottom of the cage then appears to light across the cage on one side only in a line that moves from the edge of the cage toward the hostage inside the cage, and he stands there. And he's in his orange jumpsuit, and he's standing upright like you just saw, and he's looking ahead. And first the flames touch the hostage's pants, and they catch fire. And then it moves up, and it ignites his shirt. The hostage, the pilot, we know, begins to jump around in the cage. He flails his hands about shoulder high, then soon he covers his face with his hands. He's on fire, every bit of it. At this point, there's canned music and chanting in the background and screaming, which sounds like it's edited in, not like it's part of the images on the screen. The pilot, with his face covered with his hands, begins to walk around the small cage. Every part of him is on fire. The video is now edited in slow motion. Eventually, the pilot collapsed to his knees while leaning against one side of that cage, leaning forward. Finally, he appears to grab the cage bars with his hands. Then he collapses to the ground, still against the cage bars, into what I'd probably describe best as a fetal position. There's thick black smoke. The hostage is now all black in color and hardly moving. And an announcer speaks in Arabic. Then after an edit, a large yellowish-colored, sand-colored front-end loader that you might see at a construction site arrives at the cage. It's loaded with concrete and rebar and all kinds of what looks like discarded construction material, mostly concrete. And then the front-end loader raises its load and dumps it on top of that cage and presumably the remains of the man inside. and it crushes the cage and everything in it. After that, there are a number of images on the screen, a number of pictures of people presumably who either were held or are being held by ISIS. Then the video closes as it opens with a number of credits, like you might see Lionsgate or 21st Century at the beginning, and then it would go to another credit, and it did that at the end. It was a video of the burning alive of a human being, a ratcheting up of